Thank you so much, Jennifer, and good afternoon to everybody, and I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Caroline Waxler. I do digital strategy consulting, and I'm also a journalist, and I am so honored to be here with you all today and to be moderating this fantastic panel of really talented women. I'm excited to see what is going to come out of our conversation. So first, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do and why they're here today.
Sure. My name is Michelle Zatlyn. I'm the co-founder of a company called CloudFlare. This is the third company I've started, and I've also worked at companies like Toshiba and Google that you may have heard of. And again, CloudFlare is a performance, security, and availability service. So if you run a website, a blog, or any sort of web property, we make it faster, safer, and smarter.
My name's Carly Schwartz. I'm the founding editor of Huffington Post's San Francisco section. We came here a little over a year ago because San Francisco was the perfect market to bring the Huffington Post brand to. Before that, I was at their headquarters in New York, and before that, I was in San Francisco for about 3 years, kind of working in politics, digital strategy, variety of fun things, but I'm psyched to be back in journalism.
Great. Hi, I'm Heather Marie. I'm the founder and CEO of 72Lux. And 72Lux is a software company that enables any digital publisher the ability to sell the products that they're talking about directly on their website. And prior to that, I was on the founding team of Affinity Labs, which was later acquired by Monster.com.
First of all, thank you, Carolyn, for having me today, and Social Edge Summit for putting me on this amazing panel of women. I'm Laura Slezinger, and I'm one of the founding partners of a law firm, Venture Gained Legal, that focuses on helping startups through very beginning, through all their legal needs. And I also run the San Francisco chapter. I'm the managing director of Girls in Tech, which is a nonprofit organization that is promoting women in technology and entrepreneurship.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for your introductions. So this panel is about leadership, not just for female-founded companies, but leadership tips in general, but we are going to discuss what it's like to run and start a company, you know, as a woman and to lead a company. So I'm going to start with you, Michelle, and if you could tell us some successful leadership techniques that you've used and how they've worked.
You should just ask my team, not necessarily me. So, I mean, I'm a big believer in there are no silver bullets in anything in life, and so I'll just preface it with that. But I think there's a couple of things that are good guiding principles. I don't think anything I'm going to say is that surprising. But the first is I think that you have to act consistently as a leader so your team knows what to expect. It's when you're inconsistent that it's really hard to predict, and I think that makes it really hard to work with people like that. And the second thing is you know, I have super high standards for myself and for my team. But I think that because I hold them for myself as well, and I'm putting in just as many hours and holding myself to make sure things get done to completion, and when I don't, I take responsibility. And so then that goes down to the team, to the rest of the team as well, where when I expect them to be held accountable because I hold myself to the same standards, again, it's back to this consistency sort of theme. I think that's really important.
Great. Leading by example.
Yes.
Great. And how about you?
So I have a really small team. There's 4 of us, and we're responsible for producing a lot of content on very tight deadlines. And I just try to keep things as creative as possible and as interesting as possible for them to keep them motivated. It does get to be kind of a grind, even though the stuff we produce is totally different on a daily basis, whether we're, you know, going into a meeting at City Hall and live blogging it or writing about the best restaurants in the city. So I try to kind of keep them excited by doing different things. We'll do kind of last-minute company retreats at my reporter's parents' house in Tiburon, so we can sit outside and write from there. Kind of, yeah, exactly. I let them work from home if they have too much to do, and then I also kind of gather us together for just little team powwows once a week where we can, it's 5:30, we drink a glass of wine and just kind of talk about where the company's going and where our vision is. And I try to keep it an even playing field. Mm-hmm. Feedback is constantly welcome. Yep. It's an open door. Talk anytime, text me anytime. And just because we are so small, that kind of really helps.
I like that. That's great.
So, you know, a couple different things. Agree with everything you guys are saying, but Another thing I would add is just, as a leader, make sure to over-communicate everything. And, especially to startup, things change on a daily basis. Sometimes you tell them one thing and it'll change again 3 hours later just because things move so quickly. So I think it's really important as a leader to over-communicate and just make sure that everyone on the team is always aware of what the goal is so that the whole team can work together for that goal, whether it's changing on a weekly basis, monthly basis, or quarterly.
I like that.
This is such an important question in San Francisco and Silicon Valley where so many people are starting their own companies, and you really need leadership in those situations. The way I approach it, what's always been my guiding principle in leadership is service. And I think that if you focus on that and you focus on the fact that this is a huge responsibility as opposed to a position of glory and status, then you're gonna be in the right
that's great.
heart place, and your team's gonna know that, and your clients are gonna know that, and your investors are gonna know that. You're putting your all in, as you said. You're holding yourself to the same high standards, and everyone will know that you're really there for the right reason. You're gonna roll up your sleeves when you need to, instead of always putting the tough work off to everybody else. And so that's what I really try to focus on, and I think everybody will know it.
That's great. And the flip side of that, can you each tell us about a key failure and what you've learned from it? And why don't we start with you?
A key failure. I don't usually like to use the word failure because that sounds really final. Exactly. I like to say challenge, and I like to say opportunity, because I've found that the really crappy times in my life that I've been through have been the times that I've grown the most and that I really kind of was able to propel forward. And so I actually will look back or in the midst of something, there always seems to be something, right, that you're going through, and kind of say, okay, calm down for a second. Yes, this is not awesome. This is tough for whatever reason, but what's the opportunity here? I can really use this if I approach it in the right way. It's not just about surviving and getting out to the other end, but really saying there's an awesome opportunity here. I need to see what it is, and I need to see what I can do to allow this to grow me and become more of a success that way.
So I would say, I think when you start any company, you're going to experience a number of different failures or learning experiences. And if you don't, you should take more challenges. But one thing that I would say, looking back, was probably in several different situations, I think, one in particular, just assuming things. So, assuming that because there's any sort of verbal agreement or because you've been making progress with something, that it's actually going that route. And I think whether it comes to anything relating to a business, nothing's done until it's done. So just making sure that there's never any assumptions ever, and that you're controlling it all the way through.
How about you guys? Any specific stories or any examples?
I came up with a story in advance. I'll never forget when this happened. I was a junior account executive at a really small digital ad agency. It was like my second job out of college. And back then I would get really kind of overwhelmed and in the weeds when we were moving really quickly, and we had to get something done. And we were in the process of securing an amazing new client, just this tiny little company based in Vermont. And they were gonna, give us a whole ton of money to run this whole campaign from the ground up for them. And I accidentally sent a budget to a CC'd email thread that had 2 freelancers on it, not just the client, but the client freelancers, so they knew just how much money they'd be sending us. The client was livid, fired us. I almost lost my job. I remember crying in the bathroom and going up to the CEO and just apologizing profusely. And he kept me on the team. We were a small team. And I just never forgot that day. And from that moment on, I just kind of the breathing and the moving slowly and the realizing that going from point A to point B doesn't necessarily have to be a race was kind of a lesson that I took with me forever.
So how long after each email do you wait to hit send?
Well, now Google has that awesome unsend function.
Yes,
so everyone should
great.
set that up in their inboxes if they haven't already. But, a good reread is always nice, always checking to see who's in that CC field.
Exactly. How about you, Michelle?
So mine's a little bit broader. So I have a really strange background. Like I I have a chemistry degree, and I run a tech company now. I thought I was going to be a doctor for a long time, and my whole life set me up for that path. And then I realized I questioned one day whether that's actually what I wanted to do. And then I've worked in finance. I've worked at consumer electronics companies. I worked at Google. Again, I've done lots of different things. And some of those jobs I loved, and some I really disliked, like a lot, immensely. And I felt lost a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I think about all the collection of experiences and where I am today, it all makes perfect sense. I've made it all make sense. But there's definitely moments in my career where I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. How do I get out of it? And so, I guess what I learned from those dark moments, because again, these things last long times. When you don't like something, it takes a long time to change it, was you can change industries, you can change roles. For me, I had a science degree, and I realized, again, I didn't want to go to med school. I wanted to stay in business after working for several years. And so I set myself up to go to grad school to get my MBA. That was really important for me in my career. And again, that's not an overnight decision. You have to take a GMAT. You have to get letters of recommendations. You have to have all this different work experience. And so I started to change paths. And then it's when I was at business school that I started the company that I have now, CloudFlare, and it's been amazing. And so I guess what my learning is life is a marathon. And so if you don't like what you're doing now, you can change it radically. You just have to but if you like what you're doing now, that's great. Get as much as you can as the experience. But, things change really quickly in life. And, if you think about what you were doing 5 years ago, it's probably totally different than you are doing today. And 5 years from now, it'll be completely different again.
That's great. Now, is there an entrepreneur, is there a CEO that you look up to, that you, as a role model to you?
This word mentor, I wish I had a mentor. I really do. I
find it so hard to get a mentor. I don't know how to get one.
So if someone here has mentors, that's amazing. There's lots of people in my life that influence me as to who I am today and how I act, absolutely, that I personally know. Right. And there's pieces of those. So obviously family, I have sisters and parents, and then other just people I've worked for or worked with that, I admire for different sorts of things, and they've shaped me as in my career. But in terms of a true mentor, especially woman entrepreneur, woman founder, I don't have one. And people often say how do you get a mentor? And I don't really know what the answer is. I think today with people being much more transparent with Twitter or writing blogs, you can actually learn a lot without actually knowing them.
That's a great point.
So a lot of my mentors are people I don't know, which is
follow on blogs and Twitter. What?
Oh, there's so many people. Okay, from the women's side, again, this is not going to be surprising, but obviously, Marissa Myers and Sheryl Sandberg and Padma. There's lots of women doing really interesting things, but then men too, which I think is Chris Dixon. He's an amazing tech strategist. Just setting the context. If you're in tech, you need to understand the context in which you're operating, and he does a really good job of thinking that through. Fred Wilson from Union Square Ventures. These people are. A lot of the Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. They're actually operators who are now on the venture side, and they talk a lot about what it was like. And you can learn a lot, even though, and again, I don't know these people, so I can't call them up for advice. But yet. But you can infer a lot from their writings.
That's great. Who do you follow, and who do you look up to?
The obvious answer would be Arianna Huffington, our CEO. She's
the
be-all and all, I think, of kind of women entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Just to come into Huffington Post when it was kind of a small operation working out of a loft in Soho and be part of the transformation we just kind of ballooned overnight was super inspiring. A lot of people wondered, is this going to even be possible?
Right.
And it was, and we're still growing just in exponential ways.
Yeah.
We just launched that live TV station, and
great.
we're going into different countries, and it's just so incredible to watch what she does with such limited resources, just choosing the right people to lead various projects, and that instinct of what to pour your resources into and what to kind of hold back on. She believed in my vision for the San Francisco site, so I kind of owe her everything for that.
Well, two things. Did you go to the company because of Arianna? And then
I always kind of watched her when I was working at other, in politics and in advertising, and before that in journalism. She's always been kind of a force.
Right.
But no, I went to the company because I read Huffington Post nonstop, and I was blogging for them, and it was kind of just a dream
Right.
But the day she interviewed me, I kind of set aside my entire day for that 5-minute phone call and only did that 5-minute phone call that day. So she's definitely a huge one, and it's really inspiring to go back to the office, and she remembers me. She remembers everyone she's ever talked to on her staff, and her door is always open. So that's really incredible for someone who's got, a Rolodex of 60,000 contacts and is in, a different city every hour doing a various appearance like this one. Yeah. So on a larger scale, I would say her. Also, another woman who really sticks out to me is the leader of the interactive department at the first ad agency I worked at, which was my first job out of college. I was an intern. And I just had always thought of kind of tech as this nebulous sort of thing that I'd never get because I was an English person, a journalist person. And she really made it super accessible for me. I loved the way she ran her teams with her morning meetings and just her kind of,
What did she do in the morning meetings?
She just was as accessible as I want to be. She was funny, but she was firm. And she, made it fun, but also got everything done that she had to get done kind of from point A to point B. She was type A and type B at the same time, if that makes sense. And she kind of took me under her wing and taught me everything I needed to know about coding and about building websites and running a tech team and just kind of from the nitty-gritty to the bigger picture. And we're still in touch, and I owe her a lot.
That's great. How about you?
So a few different people. I mean, I'd have to say first the founder of Affinity Labs because it was hugely helpful as an entrepreneur to be on the founding team with another successful entrepreneur. And if anyone doesn't know him, it was his second successful exit. So I was very fortunate to be able to go through that experience with him and learned so much just by being in the trenches through that experience. So I'd have to say him. And then more recently, someone who's joined my advisory board, her name's Dee Solomon. And she used to be I don't know if you know her, she used to be the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Condé Nast for many years. And, when I started 72 Lux, I didn't have any background in traditional publishing. And we now work with a lot of traditional publishers. So she was someone that really, within 10 minutes of meeting her, said, "This is really interesting, and I want to help you." And very quickly brought me in. So we've been working together, and she's been a huge help. Then someone that obviously everyone knows, and you mentioned as well, is Marissa Meyer. I think that I've actually met her once very briefly, but don't know her. But I think that she's obviously very much in the spotlight for women in technology, and she's paved the way in a big way. And one thing that she probably she doesn't get enough credit for. Is how hard it is, and she is still being, she's always criticized for a number of things that she does, both as a woman in technology and as a woman, in her personal life, with a lot of things that have been in the news recently. And I think that it's inspiring to see someone that's continuing to go after that success, even though people are trying to challenge it and attack her for other reasons.
Great.
So before I talk about the women in my life that I really admire, actually at Girls in Tech, we've addressed the question of what is a mentor.
Oh, that's great.
A lot, and naturally. And we've found that women and men have different definitions. For women, it's this amazing person that they're inspired by, but probably don't know, maybe have never met. Oh. And for men, it's the person that gets them into the country club and into the VC's office and into whatever. So I think women need to find some mentors.
I like that.
But the woman in my life that I've been working with in a volunteer position, she is the director of it's a men's rehabilitation facility for drugs and alcohol in the 6th Street corridor over here, which if you're familiar with San Francisco, is not a nice place. And so they've basically let people in off the street. They've kind of interviewed them to see that they're ready to kick whatever habit it is they have. And it's a tough environment, as you can imagine. A lot of people there, rough around the collar. Not pretty, but she's the sweetest little old lady. And I can't even imagine how she is constantly surrounded by all these hulking men that are coming off of drugs and have lived on the streets and violence and all sorts of stuff. And she just emanates this amazing personal strength and inner peace. And she's so gentle and yet has complete control. I mean, she's been running this entire place for years. Yep. It is super successful, and yet she hasn't had to adapt by becoming hard herself. So I really look up to that, and I'd love to find out her secret.
So mentors in the tech space don't have to come from the tech space, and women that you look up to.
I'd say for leadership, a lot of leadership skills generally transfer over to any.
Right. And so you've worked with so many entrepreneurs, and what do you see that makes female entrepreneurs, what are points of differentiation that you've seen?
So one of the things that we've noticed, women are so overaccomplished. I mean, we are definitely graduating with the same, if not more, degrees, education, skills, accolades, all this stuff as men. So, and we're all exhausted, and usually the successful women I know are not only running a company or a high-level executive, they're also on 5 boards and volunteering and have kids and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I know a lot of successful men as well, and they go home and they play Call of Duty. And then, you know, they make millions of dollars during the day, that's great, but then they go home and play Call of Duty and they are not worried about it. But we've been finding that what's differentiating is soft skills. So the mentorship issue, the networking issue, the communication issue, and of course, confidence. So guys naturally seem to be born with this just like, I'm awesome and I can do this and everybody knows that I can do this. And these women that I talk to who are amazingly accomplished are like, oh, no, I don't like to say that I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like to call myself a founder. And you're like, just freaking call yourself a founder. Because that's what you are, because you founded the company. And so I think that we all need to have a lot more confidence in our abilities.
Yeah. That's a good, yep. Some of the men may have differing opinions to what you said, so we are going to have an audience Q&A. And Carly, in your political background, how have you seen, what can women entrepreneurs learn from politics?
I mean, politics isn't as much of a men's game as you would think it is. I would say just kind of speak your mind, speak the F up. Don't be afraid to get up in their faces. I mean, when I was working for Governor Brown's campaign, which was the last campaign I was on, I mean, I would tell him if something he was doing was, you know, BS, or if I didn't agree with, you know, his talking point that was, you know, on the Channel 5 News that night. And he would always kind of pause and ask me why. I mean, you just can't be afraid of speaking up, speaking your mind, and, you know, going into something. I think confidence, like Laura said, is really key.
And because you're at Huffington Post, I know a lot of folks in the audience are interested in writing for. What advice can you give them? What are the advantages to writing for Huffington Post, both as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur?
Well,
and how do
the rumor around the office is that Ariana wants every single person on earth to have a Huffington Post blogger account, so it really is a little bit easier to get in the door than you would think. You can start by emailing me if you want.
What is your email?
It's carly@huffingtonpost.com, CARLY. And I mean, I think blogging for HuffPost is awesome. It really kind of, I mean, people say, oh, you don't get paid, yada, 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 what's the benefit? Our audience is huge. Our reach is enormous. Having the brand attached to anything you have to say can just be really helpful and open all sorts of doors for you that you wouldn't expect. I have a friend who just started his residency in San Francisco. He's training to be a surgeon.
Great.
And he started blogging on the side just sort of for fun and about, you know, medical issues. And it caught the attention of some of the highest ups, you know, at his hospital, for example. So really, it's applicable to anything, and it just is kind of a cool outlet, you know, for you know, a much larger audience to hear what you have to say.
Or to build your personal brand.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
personal brand is the big buzzword that we like to use, but it definitely helps. Every blog page has a little bio with your archive, and
you have very good SEO.
We do have good SEO. We kind of nailed that one with our technology officer back when we started.
Michelle, you've been named one of 2011 top women to watch in technology by the aforementioned Huffington Post, and one of the top 15 women to watch in tech by Inc. Do you like those accolades, or would you rather just be in the top entrepreneurs to watch or the top people in tech to watch?
Oh yeah, definitely would rather be in the top people to watch in tech. I mean, I think that CloudFlare is something really special, and I'm really proud to be part of it and have created it. You know, I I get asked all the time about women in tech, women, men. Frankly, I'm kind of tired of that conversation. I know that probably makes some people in this room cringe. I personally think that it's not women versus men. It's really not. It's to be successful, having a diverse team is an asset. And diversity is not just gender. It really isn't. It's lots of different things, different backgrounds, different geographic, where people have lived around, things that they've done, different experiences. And I think that if you have a really diverse team that shares a common purpose or goal, you can achieve really incredible things. And so people often boil it down to gender. Maybe it's because it's easier to talk about that. I would love the conversation to change to diversity. And often I find like this women in tech discussion, talking to the men, like my co-founder, so I started CloudFlare with 2 other guys, and one of the CEO of the company basically wrote a blog post of what it's meant to have a woman co-founder on the team to him, and he started 3 other companies, so he with men before. And I thought that was really interesting. Wow. So I would love more men to come into the conversation to talk about what's it like working with women and a diverse team, and the conversation to go from men to women to more of a diversity and why that's an asset. So, but of course those accolades, I mean, they're wonderful. It's third-party validation that we're working on something interesting. People look at these lists, they pay more attention to my company, they might sign up, they invite me to come speak to different things. I mean, all those sorts of things, it's all great. But at the end of the day, I think it's, are you building something that's impactful, and do you have a team that can deliver on what you say you're going to do?
Yeah, and we connected through a Women in Tech mailing
listserv,
list.
yes, exactly.
Heather, you led sales at Affinity Labs. Many entrepreneurs have never had a sales background. How best for entrepreneurs to succeed in that area, both in general and how for women entrepreneurs?
Right. So the good news is you don't need to go to school for sales. So if you went to school in your computer science background, sales is pretty easy to learn. I mean, sales is something that you learn by doing.
Right.
And it's really about 2 things. It's about being persistent, and it's also about being likable too.
Yep.
So if you're an entrepreneur and you're usually going to be the first salesperson in your company, and often your investors are going to tell you have to be the first salesperson in the company. And it starts with, obviously you're the most knowledgeable person at your company, so that's really kind of the first step. But the second one is really about being fearless. So the worst thing that someone can do when you're selling is say no. But that's exactly what you're going to get, an automatic no if you never try. So you have to really kind of let go of any fear about walking up to someone or cold calling someone or emailing them to really be able to get there. But the first thing is really, you're the most knowledgeable person in your company already. So take that confidence and then then really decide on how can you relate, or how can you put yourself in your client's shoes or whoever you're trying to sell to, so that you can, so that they can understand what it is that you're selling, and emphasize, and then really just go out and ask. And it's just really something that you have to learn by doing, and it's something that you'll learn pretty quickly by going out there. And even if they say no, you'll learn by having that conversation. And you never want to accept no as a salesperson, even if they say it's not really a good fit for me. You should continue that conversation. Say, okay, why is it not a good fit? Is it and kind of get to figure out what the objection points are, and then use that as a talking point to kind of maybe if it's not something your company can do, or if it is something your company can do, obviously maybe you weren't communicating it right the first time, and you can learn from that and be able to re-communicate that to them. And if it's something, if they're objecting for a reason that is not relating to your company or not a function of what you have, maybe it's something that you can think on, and maybe it'll help you realize that maybe you're not selling the right product, or it's not really the right, maybe you need to reevaluate it, and there's a bigger opportunity.
Great. And you had how did you start 72 Lux? I know you had a retail background, and what lessons can you give about the value of someone working in the trenches of an industry?
Yeah, so I worked in retail for about 5 years on the sales side, and then jumped into digital media at military.com and then Affinity Labs. And I think the most important, and then I started 72 Lux really based on personal experience and a real opportunity that I saw in the market. And I think the most important thing to think about is really just taking off the blinders. So there are so many industries that are ripe for disruption that haven't changed because it's the same people in it, and because people aren't looking for opportunities, and people are just and sometimes people just never ask, why is it done that way? Someone graduates college, enters in that industry, and then just assumes that there's a reason why it's operating. So what I did is really start to kind of question why things were operating a certain way. Then I saw an opportunity, and then I went out and did a lot of research to make sure, okay, maybe there's something I'm missing, or is this really an opportunity? And that's kind of how it all started.
That's great. So this one, I'd love to open it up to audience questions. So does anyone out there have anything burning for this group up here? Don't be shy. Okay, great.
Hi, I guess my question is for Laura. You were talking about differences in mentorship and how men, it's kind of more, introductions, and with women, it's more kind of just like, I guess, ideas and more softer things. Do you think that one way is better, or, that one way is more strategic, or kind of what differences do those make?
Well, I think that one is certainly far more practical. If you need an introduction to a venture capitalist because you're raising money for your company, if somebody can do that for you, that's extremely helpful. And as we all know, referrals in this world and knowing somebody is extremely useful. So I think it is important for women to network with each other and build those types of relationships, and network with men that are comfortable with that mentorship. That can be difficult at times for obvious reasons, but that's also why I think we need more women leaders and executives and that sort of thing, because it can be awkward for a less experienced woman to be networking with an older man, that sort of thing. But it is absolutely necessary for those practical reasons. I mean, it's great you can choose a bunch of wonderful, inspiring quotes from somebody who's succeeded, but it's not the same thing as being introduced to the people that you need to know for your business.
One thing, if I can add to that, is I think a lot of times if you're just open and helpful to people, you'll find that you're someone's mentor and you may not even know it. I've had people who I've recommended for things and they'll drop the M word. I'm like, oh, I'm your mentor? That's great. I had no idea, but that's fabulous, and I'm honored to do that. So yeah, I mean, my philosophy is just be as open and helpful and be as proactive as possible. You're not going to lose anything by, if you see an opportunity or see a way to connect two people, connect them, introduce them, be proactive. And obviously, if one's high level and one's lower, you can email the high level person and say, I think I know I know a person who'd be a great fit for your company, or have you looked at this, and then may I introduce you? No one's going to say no. And if they do, they might have a specific reason, but it won't hurt you to try to make those connections, especially if you have nothing to gain from it. Just try to, if it's no skin off your back, go ahead and do it. So. Question in the back.
Hi, Laura. My name is Eric Newton. I run a law firm here in the city as well. And I wanted to riff on something similar to the last questioner, which was about the approach that women take to branding themselves and being confident about their own entrepreneurship. I was at an Emerge America luncheon. Do you know Emerge? They're a women in politics organization that sort of tries to foster women getting into politics, and they had a governor from Vermont, a female governor, and she said that a man will wake up in the morning and shave and look at himself in the mirror and say, I think I could be a U.S. senator. And a woman will wake up in the morning and do whatever she does and say, I could maybe be a U.S. senator, but I think I'll go get 6 degrees first in order to have what it takes to do that. And she was saying that you needed to get over that. Women need to go, just as you were just saying. Yeah. But I wonder if there's a strength inherent in that way of being that we're overlooking. Certainly not in passivity. Well, maybe in passivity. I don't know. Is there a strength that women bring to the table in the way that they approach business that we're forgetting about?
There are certainly plenty of strengths that women bring to the table. As far as feeling the need to outperform people in the same position as themselves, I think that that's an issue that they need to get over. If you're always thinking you're still another degree away from being able to qualify for, then that's definitely holding you back. But certainly women bring plenty of strengths to the table. But I also agree with what Michelle said. Diversity is not necessarily gender-based. And I deal with these questions all the time, obviously with Girls in Tech, and I'm really more interested in reframing the questions now. A lot of the questions being asked about what men's skills do women need to learn so that they can make it in business. And I want to say, what are the normative skills that good entrepreneurs, good leaders, good business people should have, separate from gender, and what should we all be aiming towards? So if you say, well, women are more collaborative, and they bring that collaborative spirit to the office and to the business environment, that's fantastic. But when men are collaborative, everyone's like, he's a great leader. They don't say he's more feminine in his business skills. So I think it's really important to just isolate what are the skills that we really appreciate in leadership, what's going to be successful, and for the context too, what is really needed in this context and where do you find it, and focus on that.
Question in the back.
So at our startup, we've got about 25% of the employees are women, which I consider them kind of like my secret weapon. And so if they're like a competitive advantage of forms, I mean, what can I do you think, as a founder, as a CEO, to help foster, develop the women at the company? Are there programs? Would you recommend, like, gender-specific programs to help those women, or is it just, in general, have programs that help develop leadership with, my employees if I want to see them one day go out in the world and do their own things and support, that kind of thing?
Whoever wants to take. Michelle.
Okay. That's awesome. 25%, that's high. That's amazing. And I love that you just called it your secret weapon. It's like, this is what we need more of. That's amazing. So, I mean, again, I don't even, what company are you from? I don't even. Okay. So, again, I'm not a big, I don't know if you need like women-specific programs, but I think that opportunities to present in front of the rest of the team, verbal recognition for every team member, being like, hey, so-and-so accomplished this, and this is why it's important, good job, regardless of gender, I think those sorts of things matter a lot. And then just saying to your team, hey, look, this is not going to be your last job. I'm sure you guys are all going to go off and do other things in your life, and I really want to see everyone here, develop as leaders, and, I see this as part of your path to get there. I mean, I think those sorts of things are important, but it's really like action. So recognition, again, regardless of gender, telling somebody when they do a good job, giving different people opportunities to work on different projects, high profile or not. Again, I don't think you need to bring like an esthetician in to come do manicures at the office or anything like that. I think it's the other things where people feel like they're doing good work that's important to the company and being, working with other people on the team. I also think making all the women work together and the rest of the men working. I mean, I think it's mixing teams is important too.
Great question. Does anyone else have any comments to add to what Michelle said?
Yeah, I'll just add. I mean, I completely agree with that. I think just when you're giving, give them more. Find the ones that you think are able to be leaders and give them that responsibility and make sure they're aware that talk to them and see if they want to become leaders too, because not everyone does. And I think,
a great point.
Yeah. So and some people, and we want more women leaders. We definitely do. We want more diversity, as everyone else is saying here, but make sure that they want to be. And if one of them does, I think any sort of encouragement to say, I think you'd make a great leader in the company, and here's some additional responsibility that that I think you'd be good at, and kind of see how they handle it so that you can start kind of growing that leader from within the company. And then just a side comment too, I do think, that it is still helpful to, if they're, I don't know where you're based, but depending on where you are, for them to go to see other female leaders, because there's something kind of psychologically about seeing someone that you can relate to, whether it's, gender or it's a similar, they have a similar background, and seeing that they can do it. And, I think that, as you were kind of mentioning, women inherently kind of sometimes have this mentality that, okay, well, I don't know if we're good enough, or if I'm not sure if I have enough of the credentials to get there. So if they can see other women that maybe didn't do, the extended credentials and get, an MBA and a JD and everything else before they decide to start a company, that's helpful for a leader to see other women doing it too.
I agree, and I think in the startup world, people are just jumping in, more and more, and I think that's great. I mean, I'd love to have the ratio of folks in the startup world outpace that of the S&P for women. I mean, right now, before I came here, I noticed some really interesting statistics that 18% of women in the S&P are directors and just 8% are CEOs. So it'd be nice if we can do a little better in the tech world. So with that, I think I'll wrap unless we have any other questions. And otherwise, the panelists will be around for a while, so please do come up and introduce yourselves. So, and thank you guys, and please give everyone a round of applause. So.